studying recently in the book of 3rd John, and a few weeks ago, at the very outset of that study, I came across a phrase in the first few verses that gave rise to a question. And it's a question that I've given some thought to in the weeks since then. And I think it's an important question, and I think it's a question that merits the consideration of all of those who are interested and concerned about the state of their souls. It was right there at the outset of 3rd John in the first 3 verses where the scripture says, "The elder unto the well-beloved Gaius, whom I love in the truth. Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. For I rejoiced greatly when the brethren came and testified of the truth that is in thee, even as thou walkest in the truth." So I would ask today, how is it with your soul? Is your soul prospering? And we're not asking if your bank account is prospering or your family is prospering. We're not asking if your church is prospering or your career prospering, but rather, is your soul prospering? It's a question that strikes at the most fundamental level of our existence. Are we enjoying soul prosperity? John's wish for Gaius's prosperity and health, wished for him prosperity and health because, according to verse 1, John loved Gaius in the truth. So at the very outset, we come to realize that John's love for Gaius was not some kind of just a sentimental feeling, but it was a love that was produced by their mutual love for the truth. Gaius was clearly a man who had great love for the truth, and we'll see even greater evidence of that in just a few minutes. And John, the Apostle John, was a great lover of truth. It was he who spent time walking with and interacting with he who claimed to be the way, the truth, and the life. And so both of these men were great lovers of the truth, and it was that focal point that gave them a great love and appreciation for one another. And so after having acknowledged in verse 1 Gaius's love for the truth, the Apostle John then wishes for him that he may prosper more generally in his life and be in health, which are two things that are good in this life. They make life more comfortable. But John wished this for Gaius even as his soul was prospering. And here's an interesting thing. He wishes for Gaius that he might prosper and be in health, but he doesn't wish that his soul would prosper. In fact, he actually is acknowledging that his soul was prospering, and his desire is that his general prosperity and health would match that of his soul. I mean, stop and think about that for a minute. How would it be with us if our friends and our acquaintances, the brethren, wished us prosperity and health according to the prosperity of our souls? I fear that for some, and probably all of us at times, such a wish may end up being more of a curse than a blessing, because unfortunately sometimes our soul is not prospering. So again, I ask, how is your soul today? Are you experiencing prosperity of soul? And even to ask it another way, because this is the crux of what John is wishing for Gaius, how would we prosper in life if we prospered in the temporal realm to the same degree that our soul was prospering? I think it's an important question and one that merits our attention and consideration. And it's not a question that's left to subjective reasoning, just kind of sitting around and drawing conclusions based upon what we think are our opinions that, I think my soul is prospering. It's not subjective, because in the very next verse we're provided with the key, I believe, to Gaius' soul prosperity. What we learn in verse 3 is that the brethren had recently come to John from Gaius, and they came bearing testimony concerning their mutual friend, Gaius. These recently arrived brethren testified to John of the truth that was, and I think here's the key word, the truth that was in Gaius, which gives rise to another very important question. Where in Gaius was the truth? Think about it. Where was the truth? These messengers came and said and bore testimony that the truth was in Gaius. But where in Gaius? his brain? Was the truth in his brain? Was it simply a storage of facts in which John rejoiced and these messengers brought testimony of? Or was it in his soul? Yes, I believe that's probably a much more likely scenario. And I'll show you why in a second. But for now, let's just say that Gaius had the truth and embraced the truth in his soul. And the reason this is so important is because the soul is the seat of the intellect, the will, and the emotions. Whatever is there, whatever is in our soul will impact our life. So when they say that the truth was in Gaius, and we come to understand that it must have been in his soul, what we realize is that the truth of God impacted Gaius's intellect. It altered the way Gaius thought about things. The truth impacted his emotions. The truth in Gaius's soul altered the way he felt about things. The truth impacted his will. The fact that the truth was in the soul of Gaius affected and impacted the decisions that he made. And because the truth had impacted his intellect, his emotions, and his will, because the truth was in his soul was prospering. Now, the reason I believe that it was in his soul and not simply in his brain is because these messengers say not only rejoicing and cause John to rejoice in the truth that was in Gaius, even as thou also walkest in the truth, they say at the end of verse 3. So they bear testimony that the truth was in him, and then they follow that up with, even as thou also walkest in the truth. So there's a direct correlation between the truth being in Gaius and the fact that he's walking in the truth. Wherever it was at in him, it was impacting his walk. It was impacting his behavior, the way he lived his life. And the soul, the behavior, the life a man lives is a reflection of his soul. People say you can't see the heart or the soul of a man, and technically that's true. We'd have to concede that. However, the way one lives their lives is a window to the soul. It does give us clues and ideas about what's in a man's soul. Out of the abundance of the heart, a man speaketh. And so we can know to some degree what is in the heart and soul of a man by the way he lives. That's why these men could come bearing testimony saying that the truth was in Gaius. They drew that conclusion based upon the fact that he was walking in the truth, that the truth was characterizing the life that he lived. It was impacting the way he thought about things, the way he felt about things, and the decisions that he made. The people who testified that the truth was in Gaius didn't know that because they could see his heart, but because the content of his soul and heart was revealed in his living. This is how John knew that his soul was prospering. And his certainty was such that he could wish for his beloved friend, whom he loved in the truth, that he would prosper and be in health, even as his soul prospered. So think about it today. Is your soul prospering? Is the truth in your soul? Does the truth of God impact the way you think, the way you feel, and the decisions you make? Would you want your friends to wish prosperity and health to you in the same degree that your soul is prospering? It's at the very minimum worth considering. So I trust we'll all do so today, and not only today, but every day.